Learning target number 5 for weather is I can describe the changes in weather conditions associated with different types of fronts. Your essential vocabulary is air mass, cold front, and warm front. Let's review. An air mass is a collection of air molecules that have the same temperature, density, and humidity. So if you look at the picture, you see the cold air mass. It's represented by blue because it's colder molecules that come together and then sink to the ground. That coming together causes a higher pressure, which is why cold air masses are represented with a blue H. Now the opposite is true with warm air masses. Warm air masses, the molecules spread apart because they are warmer, and they rise up into the air, causing a low pressure, which is represented by a red L. Now let's talk about fronts. Fronts are zones of transition between two different types of air masses. The zone may be 20 miles across or it may be 100 miles across. But from one side of the front to the other, one clearly would sense that the properties of an air mass had changed significantly. Contrast in temperature, dew point, wind direction, cloud cover, and ongoing weather are things that could change. The frontal zone represents the leading edge of an air mass. If the edge is moving into an area of warmer air, the front is called a cold front. If the edge is retreating and the warmer air is moving into an area previously occupied by cool air, the front is termed warm front. So look at the picture. It's kind of like a bumper on a car. For the top picture, the cold air mass is moving towards the warm air mass. So we have a cold front. On the bottom picture, the warm air mass is moving towards a cold air mass, so you have a warm front. So cold fronts. Cold fronts are a front in which cold air is replacing warm air at the surface. Cold fronts are kind of like bullies and are stronger than warm fronts. Think of a linebacker in football. A cold front moves in quickly and pushes the warm air straight up, causing cumulonimbus clouds and big thunderstorms. Cold fronts usually bring cooler weather, clearing skies, and a sharp change in wind direction after the front has passed. Some of the characteristics of cold fronts include cold fronts tend to move faster than any other type of front. Cold fronts tend to be associated with the most violent weather among all types of fronts because warm air is pushed up, rapidly forming cumulonimbus clouds. They tend to move the farthest while maintaining their intensity. Cold fronts tend to be associated with cirrus well ahead of the front, strong thunderstorms along and ahead of the front, and broad area of clouds immediately behind the front, although fast-moving fronts may be mostly clear behind the front. You will have to know the weather before, during, and after a cold front. Before a cold front, air is warm and humid. Air pressure is low but begins to increase, and some cirrus clouds may form. During a cold front, cumulonimbus clouds form. Storms occur for a short period of time, and wind changes direction. After a cold front, air is cooler and drier. Air pressure is high, and clouds clear because that air mass sinks to the ground due to its higher pressure. Now in this picture, notice it is warm and humid before a cold front, and cold and dry after the cold front. When looking at a cold front, think icicles because of the shape of the cold front symbol. Here you can see the storm potential areas while a cold front is moving in. The location in which the icicles are pointing is the direction in which the cold front is moving. In this map, it is moving from west to east. A warm front is a front in which warm air replaces cooler air at the surface. Remember, Cold air is hard to move, so warm air slowly slides over the cooling air, causing long clouds to form. Stratus clouds and long periods of precipitation are quite prevalent with a warm front. This results from the fact that low-level winds in the warmer sector rise up and over the cooler, more dense air at the surface located ahead of the warm front. The lifting leads to saturation, cloud formation, and ultimately to some form of precipitation. Some of the characteristics of warm fronts include the following. Warm fronts tend to move slowly. They are typically less violent than cold fronts. Although they can trigger thunderstorms, warm fronts are more likely to be associated with large regions of gentle ascent, like stratus clouds and light to moderate continuous rain. Warm fronts are usually preceded by cirrus first, then altostratus or altocumulus, then stratus and possibly fog behind the warm front. Skies are relatively cloudy. You will have to know the weather before, during, and after a warm front as well. Before a warm front, the air is cool and dry. Air pressure is higher, but begins to decrease and some cirrus clouds may form. During a warm front, stratus clouds form. There are long periods of rain or snow, and wind changes direction. After a warm front, air is warm and humid. Air pressure decreases and the weather gradually moves from cloudy skies to clear skies, but again, very slowly it does that. Notice it is cool and dry before a warm front and warm and humid after the warm front. When looking at a warm front, think suns because of the shape of the warm front symbol. Here you can see the bigger areas of clouds around the warm front. The location in which the suns are pointing is the direction in which the warm front is moving. In this map, it is moving from northwest to southeast. Learning target number 6 for weather is I can identify and analyze features on a map or satellite image. Learning target number 6 has to do with predicting weather with cold fronts and warm fronts. Now let's look at the map and apply what we've learned. We'll look at cold fronts first. A cold front is moving from west to east. Before the cold front, notice that the air is warm and humid with temperatures in the 70s and 80s. After the cold front, the temperatures dip into the teens and to the 30s. There are probably thunderstorms in Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and Wichita. There are clear skies in Pueblo and Denver. Next, we'll talk about a warm front. Now, the warm front is moving north. Before a warm front, notice that the air is cool and dry with temperatures in the 30s and 40s. After the warm front, the temperatures rise into the 70s and 80s. There are longer periods of rain in Kirksville, Des Moines, and Chicago. And it is probably cloudy in Jefferson City and St. Louis, but the skies will be clearing soon. Thanks for listening.